Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning to the Gruber Morning Show.
And thank you for joining us again today. We've got some talking points we're going to cover with you. And as always, we welcome your questions. We'd like to see where you're coming in from and what platform. We have a picture behind us here today, which is part of our new green screen. And the tradition here had been to use personal pictures that I had taken over the years. I'm pretty proud of my photography, but, I'm humbled. AI does a better job, I realized. And there's no way I could have taken this newsroom picture unless I was on location, which of course, would be difficult. I'm not. So what I asked AI to do was give us a newsroom setting, high tech, with a cityscape through the windows.
Okay.
And that's exactly what it rendered for us. So we thought we'd play with that for a while and use different AI images. Tomorrow during the Roadster podcast, we usually put up a Roadster picture. And again, I find that, my library of pictures isn't quite as spectacular as what AI can generate. So
I'm interested to see how the AI continues to improve over time. We've had some kind of big gaffes on some of those pictures, but in general, they're just stunning.
It is.
And that podcast is at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning Mountain Standard Time. We're moving it to a new time, correct?
It is, yes. Yeah, we've got 3 podcasts now in the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They're all 3 at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And the middle of the week, Wednesday, is for Roadsters. So, but again, if you don't have a Roadster, it doesn't mean that you can't join us on the channel. And it looks like we've got a couple of people that are already chiming in YouTube. Bion, Danish Genome Institute, says good morning, and thank you for sending us that emails that email, Niles. It was very nice, and those 2 videos that you referenced, both Mark and I watched those.
Oh yes,
and I already used some of that this morning. Actually, it turns out that in one of the videos that Niles sent us, it was suggesting that you can use ChatGPT-4 to write your prompts for Midjourney so you can get better images. And I tried it, and sure enough, it worked.
I thought the video was fascinating. It made me think of, that first video made me think of the experiment that took place a few years back. I believe it was at Google, where 2 different AI platforms began communicating with one another without human intervention, developed their own language, and then ended up getting shut down because of fear from the human side, I think, is more than anything. And what's going to happen? If open source artificial intelligence is out in the wild, and we have OpenAI, and we have Bard, and we have any number of AI platforms, pretty soon 2 of those platforms are going to start talking to each other out in the wild, where it's effectively uncontrollable by human beings. That'll be fascinating to see what happens.
If they're not already doing it.
If they're not already doing it. Exactly, Jesse.
By the way, it's not that we're greatly deviating from our norm, which is the transition to sustainable energy, but we love new technology. That's what our companies have been based on for decades. And AI will begin to get integrated into some of the things that we're doing here with EV-related topics and alternative energy.
Yes. So, Niles, thank you so much for your interaction with us outside of the podcast as well. I encourage other people, send emails to us, ev@gruber.com, and we'll be glad to interact with you in that way as well.
And then YouTube, Rich Rebuild's channel has joined us. Good morning. Good morning to you as well.
Good morning.
And again, it's a brilliant way to advertise Rich Rebuild's business. Why didn't we think of that and do that with some of the other podcasts that we could be watching, right?
I know.
So I have something for you. We're active on Facebook, of course, and I've actually created personally some of the new EV sites on Facebook, and one of them that I created about 6 months ago or so was a Lucid site that really has started to take off. I think they're 4,000 subscribers or just under that right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And what I typically do is, they develop a momentum, and I get out of the way and, just occasionally contribute. Well, anyway, I saw a post on this particular site, and it went like this. It was a large black type image with white text, so it really stood out. But the text said, Elon Musk did not found Tesla, nor did he invent the car. Tesla was founded and built originally by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning. True.
Hmm.
Elon Musk isn't why SpaceX is successful. The rockets are. The genius designer of those rockets is Tom Mueller. Then it goes on. And Elon is not a genius. He invented nothing. Elon is just good at finding opportunities and stealing the credit when he buys his way in. All right. So, everybody's entitled to their opinion. And, that's what makes this world go around. And I thought about it and thought about it. And I thought, I haven't chimed in on this site in some time. So here was my answer to all of that. I said, the gift of any entrepreneur is not being an expert in every facet of running a business. In fact, it's not possible.
Hmm.
A successful business leader that is able to grow any venture and make it thrive has the ability to recognize talent, foster teamwork, and often just get out of their way. The final ingredient of great leadership is an obsessive desire to succeed, sacrifice all, and that's probably should be uppercase letters, and not accept failure. And if that does occur, to dust themselves off, get back in the ring as many times as it takes to succeed. Then I go on, I say, Elon may not have started Tesla, quote unquote, but he was there fighting tooth and nail to make sure it would survive, despite all indications to the contrary, including selling Tesla Roadsters under cost. The tenacity that he inspired in his team eventually paid off with a more sustainable EV, the Model S, and with flawless timing, nailing a pivotal transition point in transportation. The rest is history.
My take on this particular one is I very much agree with your assessment there. Opportunities present themselves to people regularly, but not everybody takes advantage of those opportunities. I look back in 1976. My father was a volunteer fireman, and we were in rural North Idaho. In order for him to be able to get contacted, because being a volunteer fireman, that means you're not getting paid, he's got a day job,
Right.
and he needed to be able to be contacted wherever he was. So he got this CB radio type thing that had a 10-digit push button on a handset. It was a cellular telephone back in 1976.
Yeah.
He came home, he had gotten this. The department had paid $3,000 for it, and that's at a time when a new car was
You
about
could buy a car.
$6,500.
Yeah, right.
And he said, "This is an opportunity, and this is the future of phones." Back in 1976, he says this.
Right.
But he didn't have the capability at the time. He wasn't prepared to take advantage of that opportunity. And so he didn't. And for us, the rest is history. He was simply another consumer of a product. He thought it would be big someday, and he was exactly right. Elon Musk came in and was prepared for the opportunities that presented themselves. So to that point, absolutely, without Martin and Mark's genius, there would be no Tesla. Without Elon Musk's tenacity and money, there would also be no Tesla today.
Good point.
Because when Tesla was trying to build the Model 3 and get it out and have it be that mass-produced car, Elon himself says they were as little as 72 hours away from being bankrupt.
Yeah.
And it was his extra infusion of cash that got them over the hump.
Right. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the other EV manufacturers that are struggling at this point financially, but we can cross that bridge here shortly. We've got a number of new people coming in, it looks like. TikTok, Caleb, he says, why can't electric vehicles use an alternator like in a combustion engine? Well, the charging of the 12-volt battery, and by the way, there's a low voltage battery in EVs because headlights and audio systems are still using 12 volts, and probably for good reason, because you'd electrocute the mechanics if you ran 400 volts of those devices. The charging is done by an electronic device called a DC to DC converter. And what it does is it takes 400 volts, converts it down to 12 volts. and eventually 48 volts, which is what the industry is moving to. So the other reason for no alternator is you don't have any rotational pulleys to drive it. So the AC condenser or the AC compressor, for example, in an EV has to be electric. There is no rotational pulley system there. So the other thing that sometimes comes up is, well, why don't you take an alternator, put that on the wheels or a DC generator, generate some power, and then feed that back to the batteries, and looks like you could have a perpetual motion machine. Well, the laws of physics tell us that nothing is 100% efficient, so that wouldn't work either.
Well, exactly. And honestly, regenerative braking is largely what you just described. But the bottom line is laws of physics. You cannot generate more energy than you expend.
Until fusion comes along, right, Jesse?
Fusion is here.
Okay.
On Facebook, Nunez JW says, looks amazing. I think he's referring to our background, Pete.
The background, nice. We're going to use a different AI-generated image each time, and we'd love to hear your comments, which ones you like best. And I'm going to challenge our audience. Why don't you write a prompt that we can use, and we may just end up using it.
Oh, absolutely. Send us images, and we may end up putting up an image on as our background as well. Mm-hmm. He says, scary but beautiful, and it's Jorge Nunez from San Antonio. So thank you for telling us where you're coming from as well.
It looks like I have a Tesla friend of mine that has just chimed in from YouTube, Michael Aldea. Michael, welcome to our podcast. He says, yeah, but the same, and he's talking about that Elon Musk post. Mm-hmm. He says, yeah, but the same could be said about Steve Jobs, and actually it was. Woz was the product designer in the early days of Apple. Elon and Jobs built companies, not products.
That is so true. And once Apple started to get bigger, the corporate board decided they wanted to be a quote unquote real company, so they kicked Jobs out, mm-hmm. only to buy Next Computers 3 years later and bring him back in as chairman of the board.
Yeah. There's some magic that happens in companies, and it's like a recipe. It takes a number of ingredients to make something successful. So
that's exactly right. Bullionaire on TikTok says Elon is a pitchman.
Well, it takes that too.
It does. and he's exactly right there. Elon is the one who has sold the vision of so many of these things. And so now for TikTok, I think we do need to make sure that there's a clarification. I see from Nande Just 68 says, I see just a green screen. On TikTok, that's all you're going to see at this point in time. We're trying to work with the streaming technology that we have, the Restream people, and so far they're not playing nice with TikTok. So we have to send out our TikTok feed on a different channel, and we do not, unfortunately, have the ability to put that picture in the background.
For those of you that that may not be aware, we stream on a number of different platforms, and probably about a half a dozen or more. And we are actually improving our TikTok experience, because it used to be that when we had a Zoom guest, TikTok wasn't able to play with that.
Right.
So last Thursday, we actually had a very interesting gentleman from Germany who repairs Roadsters and other Teslas, mm-hmm. and none of our TikTok audience could see them. But just before this podcast, I reminded Mark, and he ordered that cable that we need in order to give the TikTok experience for Zoom calls. So if we have a Zoom call guest this Thursday...
Potentially. This is not a known solution yet.
All right.
Still working on it.
We do have to test it still. We're cautiously optimistic, I think is probably a good way to say it.
An appropriate caveat by our technical people. I'm just too optimistic at times, I think. It looks like Niles is back from the Danish Genome Institute. He says, bravo, good comment. That's what I find looking back too. In fact, it's not the ideas. Many have those. It's the execution. Absolutely.
That's absolutely true. It's that persistence and willingness to get up off the mat. You look at the latest Starship rocket that SpaceX launched. It went up. It went for 4 minutes and then started doing something kind of weird and blew up. And yet everybody inside of SpaceX has said, hey, let's look at all the successes that we had and all the areas where we can learn so we'll be better next time.
Yeah.
That's key. I greatly respect that type of attitude.
Mark, I actually heard that just clearing the tower was actually their goal.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes, I had heard
they
that.
didn't even care about really, making it into orbit even or any of that stuff. So they went well beyond what they were actually trying to do, I think.
I think you're right, Jesse. And I had heard the same thing. The simple fact that they cleared the tower meant that they met all of the goals that they had. They were ecstatic, even though people around them watching from the outside said, "Oh, it was a failure. It didn't do what it was supposed to do." Actually, it did everything it was supposed to do, and then some.
Mm-hmm.
So, on YouTube, again, watch Rich Rebuild's channel. Tells us for background, the Rich Rebuild's background. Laugh.
Well, do us a favor then. If you talk to Rich, which you have admitted you do, tell him to at least give us some boost on his videos and his. He doesn't have a podcast yet, does he?
I don't know if he has a podcast yet or not.
Yeah.
But I'll bet if he joins our podcast, we would put a background up for Rich Rebuild's channel.
Rich, there's the offer. We would put up your advertising, your background, and again, if you get wind of this, we would love to have you on our podcast. Those of us that are in this space, the influencers that are in the EV space, when we get together, it creates enormous amounts of synergy. We did that with Sandy Munro, for example, and it was one of the most successful podcasts we've had.
Yeah.
In fact, people commented. They say, you get a bunch of EV experts together, and it just creates more than the sum of the parts.
Yep. Now he has one more comment. I'm going to jump forward to his comment. I think it's an appropriate and funny comment too. He says, "Ironic, you can rebuild a whole Roadster, but you can't get a TikTok background screen to work."
Touche.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, touche. From my IT background, I'm just going to say, not yet.
Right, yeah.
I would like to point out that this is a technical limitation of TikTok. This is not our fault. I'm going to go ahead and throw TikTok under the bus on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, it will happen eventually, but we just have some limitations there that are, as Jesse said, outside of our control.
All right, guys, I've got a picture if you could pop it up. It's called Charge to 100%. And again, it was one of our viewers that brought this to our attention. Apparently, in the Tesla Model S owner's manual, they recommend that you guys charge your batteries to 100%, which, of course, goes contrary to everything that the industry has been talking about with lithium-ion batteries.
Oh, absolutely.
So he sent us a copy of the PDF file that has that owner's manual. It's 160 or 170 pages, I think. It's on page 162, and this is what it says. For rear-wheel drive vehicles, Tesla recommends you keep your charge limit to 100%, even for daily use, and you regularly charge your vehicle to 100%. Well, it's been our experience that these cars even warn you, like the Roadster and the Model S, if you take it to 100%, the warning comes up, this is not a good long-term idea. You will degrade the lifespan of your battery. So, armed with this information, I sent this off to Tesla Corporate yesterday and asked them to clarify, is it a typo, and or are you guys changing your mind on this?
Of course I had to go out this morning and take a look at my Model S. I've recently changed. I'm driving a 2017 Model S now, and it does have, its maximum for trip is 100%, and the maximum for daily it does have all the way to 90%. I wonder, and I can't answer this question yet myself, have I driven yet a Tesla Model S that's not an all-wheel drive to see what the overall range charge is? I've driven a few over time, but I don't know. I think it may be that all of the Model S's that I have experience driving have the all-wheel drive or dual motor type of configuration.
Mm-hmm. We'd have to check our loaner pool. We've got some, there are quite a few Model S's in there, and see if we have one. But Until Tesla gets back to us, we can't answer that question yet. By the way, it was Ray Johnson that sent that to us. Thank you, Ray. We appreciate it. So we'll keep you updated on this, what appears to be a typo anyway.
Yes, it appears to go against the advice that we've heard elsewhere.
Or conventional wisdom, as they call it, right?
Yep. On TikTok, Jason Wirtz is commenting still about the opportunities that we were talking about with Elon. It says it takes money, money, and more money. I will not necessarily disagree with you, Jason. Money gives you the freedom to pursue opportunities that not having money doesn't give you. That does not mean that you don't get opportunities without money, though.
Yeah. And, I would interject and say that for a small business, which of course I started 40 years ago, and which grew into a number of businesses, I do not recommend getting loans. I think it creates a false sense of security. I remember one company here in the state, who I won't mention, in the EV space, got a bunch of money from investors and decided to create a luxurious building and and put in a 20 or 40,000 square foot gym for the employees. And I thought, man, this is the wrong approach. These investors gave you money to create a car, first of all, and then as it becomes profitable, these other kind of embellishments could be inserted into the company.
Right.
But it's not day one. And anyway, a small business, I would suggest attempting to get a revenue stream established because you have a great idea, because you have a niche, and then plan to work 80 hours a week to make it happen. But as soon as you go out for loans, things change. You lose some control. And I can't imagine that you could do anything as large as Tesla or these other, EV car companies without funding, unless, of course, like Elon, you had a company that you sold and you were able to put some of that those proceeds into these companies.
Yeah, I mean, Elon bet on himself as well as the company. He believed in the idea of the investment, and so far he's made it work. He's turned himself from a company that had what was I think it's $175 million or something like that was his windfall from PayPal, and has turned that to being at times the richest person on earth.
Yeah. And, he's also one of those people that isn't afraid to go broke. Most people that amass that kind of a fortune would just cling to it,
Right.
And he was actually able to lay it all on the line. And, they say at one point during the difficult years, he was actually borrowing some rent money at times. So, but not everybody's wired that way. Let's just put that on the table.
And Pete,
That's
I got
for sure.
a question for you real quick. I think you've said in the past that's one of your reasons why you haven't, turned Gruber Motors into like Jiffy Lube, where it's franchising and massive and hundreds of millions of dollars, all that, because you want to keep the soul of the company, right?
Yeah, I guess we can talk about that a bit. What happens when you go public, for example, you are now beholden to shareholders. You really don't own the company anymore, and you lose a measure of control. My wife works for American Express. Can I say that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And, at times there are people that have been in the company for 20 years or close to retirement, but their numbers aren't quite there anymore. One woman, for example, got cancer, a year and a half before her retirement. And they scale back their involvement in the company to a degree, and their performance isn't what it used to be. In those big companies, you mentioned soulless companies, it's no longer about human beings, it's about numbers. And they discard them. One of the things that you can do when you're privately held like we are, and we plan to continue to grow on cash flow, and if you manage your finances correctly, you will have cash flow that you can grow on. So you don't have to go out and get loans. We don't expect our salespeople to produce at the same level when they near retirement. As long as they take good care of their customers, they produce enough to make their salaries, and they're not a liability, they get to transition into the next phase of their life without the fear of being fired because their numbers aren't there anymore. That's just one of many examples of what you can do when you still own a company.
Well, so the interesting thing is with Elon, he somehow still has quite a bit of control, even though he has shareholders to answer to. So
He does.
I'm curious how he manages that at multiple multi-billion-dollar company level with external financing. Is it all his investors are somehow aligned with what he wants to do, or how do you think he's achieving it?
I don't know, but I think Elon is an overlord. I saw a Barbara Walters interview after he got stung by the SEC for that 420 tweet where the stock market went crazy based on some comment he made in the middle of the night on Twitter.
Right.
And she asked him, she said, so how do they control your ability to tweet now? Because that was part of the provision, was that the board of directors would review all of his tweets. He says, no one's reviewing my tweets. She, of course, was shocked at that point, right? Anyway, it just went on. Elon, I think, is immune from some of these types of things. And maybe there's a lesson there, Maybe we're too guarded in our approach, but...
Well, I think he's built up some immunity by his track record, and that track record kind of across industries. If you have a really strong track record, you're going to be given latitude by your investors to do what it takes to continue to let the company be successful.
Good point. And that's what happened with Stephen Jobs when they actually fired him at one point in time and then realized, ooh, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
The part of the magic was that personality with all the baggage that came with it.
By all means. And yet, at the same time, I would contend that without firing him and putting the processes in place and infrastructure to allow Apple to grow, Apple would never be where it is today.
Yeah.
It took him his absence for 3 years because he was so anti-process. It took him being out of the way so that they could put the processes in. Then he came back and then realized, wow, these process things are actually working pretty well. And then he went and introduced the iPhone, and the rest is history.
So he learned something.
He did too.
During his hiatus. Yep.
So Jay K-Mac on TikTok says, why does the Model S instrument panel delaminate? And is there an approximate cost to fix?
There's the plasma leak issue, of course, as well. The screens in these cars are a new phenomena. If you think about it, in the last century, we didn't have TV screens in the cars.
Right.
And if we did, they would have been CRT-based, which wouldn't have had these problems.
Correct.
There's a vacuum inside there, With these newer screens, you have touch screens, you have plasma behind them, and they really weren't designed to be in the harsh environments that these cars are subjecting them to. The thing sits in your house. It's, for the majority of the time, temperature controlled, environmentally controlled. It's not in direct sunlight, all of those things. So until we get a better design for that application, which is displaying information in a car, we're going to have to live with some of these weaknesses. The cost to fix really varies. The Roadster has a little 3x3 screen, 3x4 maybe. The Tesla Model S has a 17-inch screen. The 3 has a little slightly different screen. I think eventually, of course, like any technology, it's going to improve and then be impervious to some of these problems that we're having.
I think so as well. I've seen a lot more in the newer Model S's that these problems don't exist. And I don't think that's just a time thing, because we can go back to 2017 and look at 2012 and 2013 Model S's that were already seeing plasma leaks 4 years later. Now we're looking at Model S's that are between 2016 and 2019, and they're just rock solid, and they're 4 to 6 years old. So I do think it's partly a function of what you said, age and inexperience. And J.K. Mack on TikTok does follow up with us and say, I have free supercharging lifetime, a Model S85 with 115,000 miles on it. He charges to 100% all the time, still gets 242 miles of charge, and when new it was 252. That would seem to really support Tesla's contention that 100% charge is completely fine, because that's only about a 3% drop on 100,000 miles.
I can't wait for their official response to this. Be interesting.
Yep. Bion Danish Genome Institute, our friend Nils, He says he agrees in regards to investors with you, Pete. I programmed a bio package from which I am now living while consulting to keep the wolf away from the door.
Mm-hmm.
I rejected 2 investors too, and no loan.
Mm-hmm.
Understand and agree.
My hat's off to you. That's the way to do it. Facebook, Sam Kinman, he says, beautiful explanation, and we're still typing the rest of that answer about not franchising. Okay, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the other reason that we find it very difficult to scale Gruber Motor Company, although we could open anywhere and be successful, the EV are proliferating, and the independent shops are going to pick up all of the out-of-warranty work eventually.
Right.
Part of the reason for not being able to scale that part of our business is because of a shortage of people. It's too new an industry. No community colleges are cranking out students yet, and even if they were, they would be novices. And we certainly can't use the existing or draw from the existing pool of mechanics that are out there because they have no idea how to go inside a module and repair down a component level, or the firmware issues that you run into, the software issues.
Right.
So that is part of what is preventing a lot of independents from popping up. But that will change, of course, as history has proven.
And so Sam Kinman, in addition to saying beautiful explanation on Facebook, he says the investors are highly in line with Elon's goals and views. Recently, people have attacked the stock and have tried to ruin it.
Yeah, the success definitely creates a lot of credibility.
Yeah.
And a lot of these investors, of course, have done extremely well with TSLA stock. So they're, I think they're going to be behind the company. It's a different story when the companies aren't successful and investors get skittish and nervous and they're not seeing the return on investment. And, then they
by all means. In fact, I think you have a story coming up about our other electric companies, vehicle companies on that.
We probably should get into that then, yeah. Yesterday, Lucid dropped 9%. And, of course, it wasn't that high to begin with. It was like $7.50 or something,
Yeah,
$7.
something like
But it's down to, closer to 8 maybe at 9%. But it was down to 702 in after hours yesterday. And apparently, here's where... By the way, artificial intelligence helped me create and condense my talking points. So I need to shout out to AI. It's a partner now. You know? It says, Lucid shares fell 9% after steeper quarterly losses and adjusted guidance. Q1 losses hit $780 million, and revenue reached $149 million, missing the analyst's expectation. Now, this is what it's all about. Even if you've got profits, but you miss the analyst's expectation, your stock can tank.
Right.
It's happened many times. Happens to Tesla all the time. The company plans to produce 10,000 vehicles in 2023, revising earlier guidance. And unfortunately, AI left that out, and I can't tell you what the original guidance was.
I can actually. The original guidance is between 10 and 14,000 vehicles. So they're saying that 10,000 is going to be the max.
On the conservative side, then.
They're going on the conservative side, yep.
All right. And then Lucid maintains, now get this, guys, we're worried about this company surviving, $4.1 billion liquidity. That means they've got cash.
Yeah.
They've got spending money. Now, they're expecting that to last until Q2 of 2024. Well, that's next year. Mm-hmm. So the real question is, can Lucid make a huge difference within a year? Do they have a proven product? Are they going to be able to continue to attract customers? They have a loyal following. So anyway, the CFO now remains optimistic and committed to sustaining the EV future. They are getting ready to launch their Gravity SUV, and the expected launch is 2024. Lucid delivered 1,400 Air sedans in Q1 of this year, which again was below analyst expectations.
Right. Analysts were expecting that they would deliver close to 2,000 this quarter because they had built nearly 2,300.
Mm-hmm. Just before the podcast, Mark and I were chatting a bit about the other companies that are struggling at this point of their evolution or development. And by the way, Tesla struggled the same way.
They did. I mean, here's some of what we were chatting about, Pete. You've got Lucid's losses were pretty close to analysts' expectations, but their top line revenue was down nearly 25% from what analysts expected. So analysts thought they were going to have around 200 million. They ended up at 150. Fisker has reported just this morning wider than expected losses, and they reported lower revenue than what they thought analysts thought they would have. Nikola has reported expected losses of 43, I think it's 43 cents a share, but the revenue widely missed what analysts thought they would have in revenue. So it's both that top line and bottom line that the analysts are looking for. Rivian is also expected to have wide losses. They're going to report later today. To bottom line, there's a lot of opportunity for growth. It depends on how these companies are going to be managed. In my opinion, only the best are going to survive. I think the Gravity SUV is going to be a game changer for Lucid because there are not very many companies out there with that traditional kind of boxy SUV. Rivian is one that I can think of, and maybe the only one I can think of that has that more traditional wagon type of SUV. The Gravity is going to be another.
And then, of course, it gets back to execution, which we talked about earlier. Are they able to ride through their cash burn cycle
That's right.
as they're getting their production capacity built up? And you have unforeseens. The story that we told a couple podcasts ago, we have two early Roadster and Model S's for sale right now, Founders number 3. And by the way, I don't know why people aren't bidding on those yet. Those are the ultimate collector car. We're never going to have another Tesla Model S Founders number 3. That's it. They only made one. And by the way, this car crossed the platform where Elon was standing, along with George Blankenship, as the first Model S's were coming off the line, and Elon handed those keys to this customer. So it is a pedigreed, noteworthy car.
Definitely.
But the point there being is, it has some imperfections as well, which are part of its mystique and its intrigue. The early dies that they installed for the Tesla Model S apparently were designed for steel, because the engineer that bought them was an ex-steel guy, And it turns out that aluminum requires a different parameter because it has what's called springback. It relaxes again and it goes back to some of its original shape, so you have to overcompensate with those particular dies.
Right.
Well, they ended up having to repurchase the entire set of dies for the early Tesla Model S. These are the unforeseens that come up that are part of this cash burn.
Right.
Because not everything is going to go flawlessly and perfectly, especially considering you've got a new product.
Yeah, and I'm going to start by disclosing I do own a few shares of Lucid stock. I own a little bit of Rivian stock. I do not own stock in any of these other companies, but this is not meant to be advice. So that there, disclaimed. I love where I see Lucid going because they are operating according to their business plan.
Yeah.
The business plan that they said 3 years ago was they're going to produce X number of vehicles, that they're going to put out the Gravity SUV, that they'll announce it either in 23 or 24, and by 2025 they'll have it out there. That they're going to talk about putting out another Lucid vehicle that's a little bit less expensive than the Lucid Air. And the Lucid Air, they're kind of following the Tesla mold, where they went to an expensive car that's very luxurious to eventually get the higher profit margins to support the mass production of vehicles. They've got another factory that's going to come online in 2024 down in Casa Grande, Arizona. So they're going to be tripling their production capacity once that new factory is online. Everything that you see there is a company that seems to be doing it right, but many of the investors don't care.
Yeah. There's one other ingredient, which is the patience of the investors.
Yeah.
And if you have a broad, portfolio of investors, they're looking for ROI. They don't care whether the company's going to make it. If the company's starting to sink, they get out and they get into something else because they want to see return on their investment.
Right.
In the case of Lucid, you have the Saudi Investment Fund, and you have to look at what is backing these companies. And the question then becomes the Saudis, who are definitely needing a second act. would they really pull out of the second act, which is electric vehicles? So I have a higher degree of confidence in that company. Now, wasn't Rivian at one point in time, or maybe still, being funded partially by Amazon?
They were and they are. Amazon has an order for nearly 100,000 Rivian electric vans. And that's a big part of the funding for the company is the manufacture and purchase of those vans. In fact, Rivian is now trying to negotiate with Amazon to figure out how they can get out of the exclusivity contract with Amazon so they can produce the vans not just for Amazon but for other large package large package delivery services who have obviously seen the vans and like what they have seen.
Who would be competing with Amazon, who is one of the larger investors in the company. So you can see the conflict of interest there, yeah.
Yeah, so there's some of that. Ford was also invested in Rivian for quite a while, but they pulled out once the Lightning came a little bit closer, and Ford saw that, wow, we thought we would produce 20,000 of these a year and be happy, and we have orders for 200,000 Lightnings.
Right.
And so they ramped up, and they went 20 to 50 to 150. Now I think I hear it's 200,000 Ford Lightnings a year or some such number that they're trying to get to.
Interesting. So it looks like we got a few comments there. Here's an opinion from J-Mac on TikTok. He said, Lucid will eventually file Chapter 11 to dissolve stock and come out of Chapter 11 and reissue new stock, just like GM and some of the airlines. You know, I remember GM. I had them I had the stock in the last century, not during their heyday. It was when they were in the throes of a imminent Chapter 11 filing, and you could literally buy GM stock at that time for under $1. Mm-hmm. So I figured I'll throw some money at it, right? And you know, you're never sure. It's like gambling, right?
Sure.
You know, it may come back with something. And I remember waking up one morning, going in my E-Trade account and saying, what happened to my GM stock? It was delisted. It was gone.
Yeah.
So it does happen.
It does happen. You know, Ford Motor Company took great pride when all of the, basically all of the domestic motor companies had to get government assistance and file for bankruptcy, and that included GM. And Ford did not. Mm-hmm. And they took great pride in that. I think even to this day, that's part of Ford's culture, that they're very proud that they did not have to take the government assistance that the other places took. It's very much up in the air to be seen whether or not Lucid or any of these other companies are going to be able to survive. I do think it's going to be only the best that survive long term. I personally happen to think that Lucid is one of the better ones and has a better chance for success than some of the others, but I think that the market is growing at a pace where a lot of them are going to have a chance for success.
And we want them all to succeed. Just to go on record there.
Oh, yes.
We have some compelling reasons that it's important to get these fossil fuel burners off the road. And I'm going to get to that here in a second. I've got a news item for you. Here we go. The masthead says almost half the planet is predicted to enter new climate zones by 2100. And essentially what they're saying is that our planet is teetering on the edge of several tipping points that once passed will topple into a cascade of ecological changes. Extreme heat waves, droughts, floods, and storms are becoming more common and more intense. The energy trapped by Earth's atmosphere and oceans are fizzing up like a carbonated soft drink under pressure. That's a sobering thought.
Yeah. You know, and that article goes on to say, what is clear, though, is that if we don't act soon to cut emissions, the rates of global warming will continue to accelerate as the decades go by. I thought that was a particularly poignant statement that the author made. And that's honestly, that's one of the main reasons that we're here doing this podcast today, trying to further the cause of electric vehicles, reduce emissions, and have a planet that our grandchildren not only would want to live in, but would be able to live in.
But can live in. Yes, good point. You know, I was in Europe 4 or 5 years ago or so, and I found it astonishing that the optimum wine growing regions now is no longer the south of France. It's become England further north. In fact, France is having a difficult time growing wines or grapes at this point. So it's happening much faster than I thought it would. We've got a YouTube comment from Nalvers53, and he says, I'm sorry, Nalvers3, there we go. Where's it 53? Nalver53. He always reminds me it's Revlon spelled backwards with a 53
That's
on the
right,
end.
that's
Okay,
right.
there we go. He says, what's your opinion about Atlas Motor Vehicles? They just rebranded as NXU. Not sure how that is pronounced. I wouldn't either. He said they make some fantastic claims about their charging capabilities. You know, we've been trying to hook up with Atlas. They're local. They're right here, maybe they're 30 miles from us for a year or more, and we're not getting any love or any response from them. We'd love to go out there, promote their product, do a video on site, have them on our podcast, have them come here. I can't give you much information, although I do get a weekly email newsletter from them. And, of course, a lot of conjecture about is the company going to make it? Are they solvent? And, you know, all of that, which is what we'd like to dispel by meeting with them. So we're not experts on Atlas at this point and would love to be, but they haven't given us that opportunity.
You know, watching some of their videos, I think their concept is fascinating. I really loved their origin story. The CEO of the company talked about having a big lifted pickup truck and a big diesel tank and wanting to be cleaner, but at the same time saying, I'm not ever going to be cleaner if it takes me 3 hours to fill up my tank when I can go to the gas station and in 10 to 15 minutes just fill it up with diesel.
Mm-hmm.
So the technology that they've talked about is a type of pouch battery that the electrolyte that is in the battery, so that helps to discharge the battery, also is the cooling fluid in the battery. And their claim is they can do 1.2 megawatts of charging. They can charge about 200 or so kilowatts of energy into a battery in about 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to learn more about that. I think it's a fantastic claim and definitely proprietary technology. It would be very exciting if it can get out beyond just the concept stage and engineering stage.
That puts us into gasoline ice engine fill-up times almost, 5
Yes.
minutes, 10 minutes or so. Sure.
Yes.
Really quick, guys. I just wanted to announce I have to go check on TikTok real quick. Seems like we're having some issues on it.
Sure.
Okay.
Let's do that. And it looks like
Sam Kimmin on Facebook. I feel like the same people who said Tesla will never even have a profit now make obscured earning expectations just so they can trash the outcome. Your thoughts?
there are a number of types of people on this planet, and the naysayers are there.
Yeah.
They're offset by those of us that are optimistic and are looking for success. There's always a shred of truth in anything, I guess, and
Sure.
different viewpoints. It's interesting that. Well, take Elon, for example. I'm about to digress here, right?
Yeah.
His mom said, why don't you guys be nice to my son? He's getting so much, flack from everybody now. And that's part of the penalty you pay for becoming hyper visible like he is.
Right.
It just comes with the territory, and you have to be prepared for it. I mean, when we release a video, not everybody is congratulatory and, gives us flowers. And there are a lot of naysayers out there as well. But, oftentimes there are lessons in that because it teaches us how to improve, how to be better. And sometimes they're right,
If a naysayer is not trying to just, what I would say in today's terms, just be a troll,
Yeah.
there oftentimes is a lot of truth and more to learn from the naysayers than from the yes men.
From the praise. Yeah. Good point. So YouTube, looks like PYGKLB says, seems like the closest academic training is in mechatronics. Have you considered recruiting there? We touched on that earlier. I don't know about mechatronics, but Tesla has actually broadened their reach with their START program. And I still don't know what the acronym stands for, but it's a EV technician training program. And I think we reported on that about a month or so ago. Excuse me.
Yeah, they
there.
had reported that Rio Hondo College in California, that there are several community colleges over in Texas now as well. Um, yeah, I remember Richard pulling up a list of about close to a dozen colleges that Tesla has partnered with to try to get people trained.
And of course, it's vital because there will be a severe shortage of EV mechanics or technicians. We don't know what to call them anymore because it's really a combination of the two. Our people
Yeah.
do wrenching, they work in software, and the guys in the lab work on component level troubleshooting and replacing parts.
Yeah, and I mean, what I'm finding with the guys at Gruber Motors is somebody comes in as electronics. After 6 months, he's learning a lot more of the mechanical stuff.
Yeah.
Somebody comes in as a straight mechanic, an ICE mechanic, and 6 months later, they're working on a lot of the electronics. The electronics guy is more specialized, but he can do some basic mechanic work. The mechanic is more mechanical, but he's able to do some of the basic electronics work. I think that's going to continue as we go forward. On TikTok, Van Goat Wagon, I do want to acknowledge as well. Hello, friends. How's business? He says.
How are you, Van Gogh
This is
Wagon?
as well, and thanks for joining us again.
So, a little news item here. It looks like there's speculation that Tucker and Elon may get together and do something. And that's gaining a lot of momentum. But I think Mark pointed out we're not sure that that's even possible because Tucker is still under contract with Fox.
Yeah, Fox has got him under contract until 2025. And based on his comments, his lawyer's comments, and so far Fox's lack of comments, I don't think they want to see him out there competing against them. Newsmax and is among the places that has offered Tucker Carlson potentially a more lucrative contracts even than what Fox had. But at this point, that non-compete is holding. I'm sure that there will be some sort of a negotiated settlement in the future for this.
So I've got an interesting story for you. My computer just shut down. It's a good thing I went to that because my script is gone now. All right. But anyway, there are a number of pioneers in the EV industry, and not many of them because it hasn't been around really that long.
Mm-hmm.
But one of them was a gentleman by the name of Jack Ricard. And he was in Missouri, and came from the ISP background. Had a company named Boardwatch, I think it was. My computer was live. I could tell you all this.
Yeah.
But he made a bit of money there, and then got into electric vehicles well before it was popular. We're talking like 2003 or something like that, and became a pioneer. There's a picture of Jack there. And there he is with an inverter. He's got some Tesla, some batteries behind him. And he began to reuse these batteries for solar applications. And he ran a podcast, EVTV, before YouTube even, and then eventually migrated to YouTube. One of his proteges is Richard Flentke. And the next picture there, guys, will have the both of them. And they used to do, at times, podcasts together. And we'll get that up here in a second. There we are. The gentleman on the left is Jack Ricard, one of the EV pioneers. And then Richard is sitting there on the right. And Jack sadly passed in 2020. He wasn't that old, but he's no longer with us. But his legend lives on. He was developing a number of tools for the EV business. One of them I talked to him about a few years ago. He was making a controller for a Tesla Model S battery that you could actually plug into the CAN portion of the battery, turn it on, charge it remotely, in essence replicating or emulating what the car was doing to control that battery.
Wow.
He was highly technical. His videos, and they're still out there, by the way, on YouTube, look up EVTV, were very technical. And you literally had to, at times, keep yourself awake because Jack was extremely engineering-oriented, and he would explain it to the minutest detail, but brilliant. Well, Richard, the gentleman on the right there that you saw, wrote a book. It's called Verities of an Electric Mule. And Richard asked me to do a foreword in his book, and he even autographed the copy he sent me. And let me read it to you. He says, Pete, love your YouTube shorts. You're the Tom Cruise in the EV video world. Appreciate your support, Richard Flentke. And by the way, that's not the first time I've heard that. I'm being, two different attachments. One was, you are the Bob Ross of the EV world. Do you remember the guy with the big pro that, who patiently walked you through all of the techniques when putting paint daubs on a canvas to replicate leaves or whatever it was? And the other one is Tom Cruise. So, but anyway, I wrote a nice foreword for his book, which will be released in June. Richard spent 11 years with Jack. They used to do some of the EV top the podcasts together. And there we go. We're starting to get some comments now. YouTube, Rudy Larno says, love Jack, a real pioneer. He was quite a character. The book, by the way, is full of interesting anecdotes and stories about what it was like working with Jack. And they would do EV conversions with vehicles, full of fascinating stories. One of them was they had a shop cat. And during one of the podcasts, apparently the cat was coming around and it was bugging Jack a bit. So he picked it up and he kind of tossed it to the side. Didn't hurt the cat at all, but apparently it was low enough to where the camera didn't pick up any of this.
Okay.
But the book, again, it is an interesting read. I think once you pick it up, you're going to have a hard time putting it down. It sprinkles the history of EVs, including a conversation with J.B. Strobel at one point in time. Oh,
fantastic.
Yeah. So some of the pioneers are mentioned in here, and it's going to be an interesting book for you to pick up. It'll be available in June. And Richard doesn't know this yet, but we would love to have Richard join us on one of our morning podcasts. So I'll be reaching out to him after this podcast and see if he has some time to spend with us and promote his book.
Yes. We've got a couple more comments coming in. First from Armando Lopez from TikTok. Says, hi from Chicago. Interested in buying an older Model S. Any suggestions?
Well, there are two schools of thought here. An older Model S, usually, 2012 through 2014 or so, is going to be out of warranty. And, of course, you're going to bear the full brunt of any major repairs, which, unlike an ICE vehicle, you have a lot of cost that's distributed amongst various items in the car. Unfortunately, EVs have a couple of big ones, and one of them is a battery pack, and that thing can be anywhere from $14,000 to $22,000, and that's for a car that's worth maybe $25,000 or $30,000. So you need to be prepared for that or think about that. And then, of course, you have a drivetrain, which could be about $6,000, $7,000. It's not for the faint of heart. I know many people that have bought used Tesla Model S's and have been quite successful with them, and then others take it to a service center and suddenly find some bad news that the battery needs to be replaced. One of the things that helps is there aren't many companies like us around yet, but that 22,000 battery pack replacement at a shop like ours would be a fraction of that, 5,000 to 7,000 type neighborhood, and it would be for opening the battery pack and repairing what's wrong inside. And it can be a number of things. It could be one of the BMB boards, a component on there failed. Could be contactors. It could be a resistive cell, which is also repairable. So my thoughts on it are be prepared, and there is some risk. But on the flip side, you're getting a highly reliable car generally compared to an ICE car. No more tune-ups, no more oil changes, no more trips to the gas station. And you're going to be doing your part to take fossil fuel burners off the road.
I think the biggest piece of advice I would say to anybody looking at buying a used EV is think a lot less about the miles and a lot more about the age. You were just talking about electronics tend to age over time because of the nature of heat. And it's not as much the number of miles that are driven that cause these electronics to age as it is the amount of calendar time that takes place over the years. An electrolytic capacitor typically is oil-filled, and a lot of times will last for anywhere from 7 to 10 years, on occasion even a little bit longer, and that's kind of regardless of the miles that are driven. So if you saw a low mile 2013 Model S and a high mile 2016 Model S that were the same price, If I was in your seat, I would buy the higher mile 2016 Model S because those components are less likely to fail, even though the mileage is there.
Right.
Kelly Blue Book and other vehicle valuation sites like Edmunds or JD Power don't really get that right yet on the electric vehicles. They tend to do their valuations using the same model that they use for ICE vehicles regardless.
Which is a mistake, yeah. But it certainly helps if you're buying a high mileage EV because it can be a bargain.
Yeah, definitely can.
Okay, guys, real quick, we're at 1 hour and 4 minutes.
1 hour and 4 minutes. Okay, I've got a comment here that I'd like to answer. TikTok user with about 15 digits says, hybrid technology, thoughts? Well, it's silly. It's probably my comment today for a hybrid technology. Although we find that some of the ICE manufacturers aren't quite ready yet to jump in the pool with both feet. So what they're doing is dipping their toes by creating a hybrid vehicle. Now, Lamborghini comes to mind.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just the antithesis of the image that they and the brand that they have developed. A Prius and a Lamborghini just don't go together, you know? And anyway, you have twice the maintenance. You've got no performance gains really because there's a finite amount of space in the car. And if you're going to jam an ICE engine in there, and you know the hybrid drivetrain, and then the battery and the electric motors, it's expensive and it's not necessary. My suggestion would be is grow some and go 100% EV.
Yeah, with hybrid technology, you get the seeming advantages of being able to, fuel up with gasoline, as well as the electric battery for the quick starts and stuff. The reality, though, is the disadvantages that you get are from both as well. You get the expensive repairs potential with a battery that goes bad over time, along with all of the maintenance and stuff that you have on an ICE vehicle. And those maintenance costs on the ICE side of it, your combustion engine side of it, aren't really changing. They're the same whether you have all of that electric technology in the car or not. So I think it's much more that you're getting the worst of both worlds than that you're getting the best.
TikTok, Scott Korber says, I definitely thought that was Howie Mandel at first. Was he talking about you or me?
Oh, he's talking about you.
Okay.
Howie Mandel has less hair than me.
Okay.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah.
Real quick, I think wasn't it Conrad last week? I'll have to look it up, but one of our guests said for the hybrid thing, the worst of both worlds, not necessary.
Right. Yeah.
I think it was Conrad maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was Conrad Buck. By the way, he's coming back. He asked, he emailed me this morning. He said he enjoyed it. And I think we can get him back on our podcast at some point in the future.
Look forward to that.
He is in Germany. He is doing what we do. He repairs out-of-warranty Teslas, especially Roadsters. And let me tell you, anybody that has learned how to work on Roadsters, really has cut their teeth properly because that's a difficult car to work on.
Yeah.
Support, schematics, documentation. There were prototypes released, to keep the company solvent.
Yeah, they're just not there. On YouTube, Blackhawk Pilot. Your definition of leadership reminds me of Teddy Roosevelt's speech in France that has the man in the arena quote. Thank you. I think that's an appropriate way to say that.
Yeah, thank you very much. YouTube, Dean Bort, he says, are Lucid cars equal or more efficient than Tesla? I know that they go farther. The battery has a bit more energy. What is it, over 500 miles on?
On the high end Air.
And in terms of comparisons, it's a different car in many ways, but it's a luxury EV, and you get both camps. Generally people that get Lucids that have owned Teslas are very impressed and oftentimes happier with the Lucid than they were with the Tesla. Mm-hmm. There's some advantages, some differences that they seem to enjoy.
J.K. Mack on TikTok asks us, he replaced my 12-volt 5 years ago or 84K miles ago. If you remember, he owns that Model S that has 115,000 miles on it. Is that unusual? Should it be replaced or wait?
We're talking about, let's see, where are we here?
Um,
Oh, there we go. Okay. So 5 years ago, wow, you've got a lot of mileage out of that. Was it a lithium battery or a lead acid battery? AGM, absorbing glass mat. Um,
Yeah, because what we've been finding on the
yeah,
Model S's is typically the 12-volt subsystem, the low voltage system, that battery usually only lasts a couple of years.
right. Yeah. And especially here in Phoenix, Arizona, when you have intense heat, when it's 115 outside, I used to drive muscle cars that had headers. And at night, you could actually see them glowing cherry red when you got on the car, when you open up the hood. But with that amount of intense heat under your hood, the 12-volt batteries would last maybe a year or so because they were
Right.
basically boiling. Now, EVs are, of course, much better. You don't have heat-generating devices like that, but still, it does get warm underneath that hood. So our 12-volt batteries will not last as long as other areas of the country. But I think you're doing pretty good if it was 5 years.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's actually kind of a unusual to a good sense.
Yeah. We have a comment from YouTube. Michael Aldea is back with us again. And by the way, let me introduce Michael a little bit more. Michael was one of the godfathers at Tesla with the Roadster battery. He's responsible. I found out just the other day, Michael, you made a comment that the marks on the batteries were color coded. And I'd like to get more information. And there was a picture of a Roadster battery that had Michael's signature on it. He had worked on it.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's kind of rewarding to see your autograph on those. So Michael is definitely a battery expert. What he's saying is that LFP batteries can be charged to 100%. Lithium ion should be charged to 90% for daily driving. And that's exactly the mantra that we have been hearing, even 80%, for example. So we're not sure what that Tesla document is talking about, but we're going to report back to you as soon as I get some information back from Tesla. It definitely appears to be a typo because everything else that we have been aware of and been preaching goes contrary to that statement made
By
in
all
that
means.
document.
Lightning Rod from YouTube is back and says, hello from Thunder Bay. What do you think of the Amprius battery systems as displayed by Monroe and Company the other day?
I think Jesse saw the whole video. Did you not, Jess?
They were just doing a tour of the facility. They didn't go into super technical detail. I mean, they did a little bit, but as far as I understand it, the video ends with the CEO and one of the main people at Amprius basically saying they're now moving into production. So we're going to see these in the near future, but they're not quite there yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think it's an intriguing and kind of exciting development if, in fact, it can come to fruition. Because, goodness sakes, they were talking about 500 watts per kilo.
Mm-hmm.
That's so incredibly energy dense compared to what lithium-ion batteries do today.
We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that one. And then, of course, there's all those other battery technologies that are emerging. The sodium battery,
Yes.
the aqueous battery, the graphene battery, which is surprising to me. Those of you that saw 60 Minutes Sunday, there was a segment done with Scott Pelley where they were talking about a lithium mining effort now that is being developed in the Salton Sea area in California.
Mm-hmm.
And they're currently taking advantage of some geothermal activity in that region, generating electricity actually from drilling down a mile or so and bringing up hot slurry or sludge. This sludge apparently has high concentrations of lithium, and rather than pump it back down into the ground when they're done extracting the heat for geothermal, generation, they're going to put it through some membranes and extract the lithium. And apparently Stellantis has taken a large position in developing a factory that, and also on contract to buy all of this lithium because the EV manufacturers now are beginning to realize that there is a shortage of lithium, which I thought was being alleviated. In an earlier podcast, we thought that production had ramped up. But my whole point in saying all of this stuff is, with these new emerging battery technologies, I'm surprised that lithium mining is still of interest to any of the manufacturers, considering we're starting to head in some different directions.
I understand that. I think lithium is still going to play a big part in our future, though, because for that element, I recently saw an article talking about ways to either make the lithium last longer or to mix lithium with some of these other salts. And there's one article was Dutch professor Marmits Wagemaker produced a compound that had 5 salts, including a lithium salt, that made batteries that would hold charge longer and be able to go through 2 to 3 times as many charge cycles. That means lithium and lithium salts would still be a major component in a battery, but they wouldn't be the only component. There are, sodium and potassium and other types of salts as well.
Interesting. Okay. Wow, we've got a lot of comments. I guess we can run a few more minutes.
Yeah, it's
All
up to you guys.
Okay.
We are at an hour and 15 minutes.
All right. What did you guys think of the Dumber truck rack that was shown off yesterday in Texas?
I think that was supposed to say Cybertruck. I'm pulling up an image for you right now.
If we can get that picture that Richard found of the wooden Cybertruck, which is probably going to be easier to produce than the stainless steel version from Tesla. There we go.
So this is the rack that they're talking about on the
okay.
back of it that they did at the groundbreaking ceremony yesterday.
I see.
Okay. Kind of.
Now, what groundbreaking was this, guys?
This was Tesla's new lithium refining plant in Texas.
Oh, that's a whole nother thing that we could talk about. Yeah, Elon was standing there with a shovel. The governor was standing there, and they're breaking ground to do lithium mining in Texas, which, of course, is going to be a whole lot closer to the plant. Don't have to bring it in from Bolivia.
I think Lightning Rod has just come up with a great comment from YouTube when it comes to lithium in your comment, Pete. He says, there is no shortage of lithium. There is a shortage of lithium processing. And what they're talking about with the Salton Sea is lithium processing. The bottom of the dead wells in Rich is rich in lithium, for instance, and a Canadian company has the current pilot project. That's a great point, Lightning Rod. I think that's something that we don't always remember.
Okay, I've got the other Cybertruck image.
All right. There we go.
There we go. There's a Cybertruck for the rednecks in our
I
audience.
think this one's more within my budget.
Okay, there you go, Richard. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Cybertruck that's going to be within my budget as well, probably.
At night with lousy lighting, it could almost pass for that, couldn't it? I mean, painted silver maybe. Yeah, almost. I could see it. All right. Let's see what other questions we have here. Let's see.
Well, we have another one from Lightning Rod. He says, when I see their vapor deposition systems, I see solar panels on top of battery cells. I think this is regarding the Amprius batteries. Instead of 500 watts per square meter, I see 2,500 watt hours per square meter. That's a good point. I think Amprius is an exciting technology and is part of the future where we're going.
Yeah. And you have to wonder, where do they come from? These companies just sometimes come out of the woodwork. Of course, they may have been operating for years without any visibility, but they're definitely visible now. And, the Monroe team does a good job of bringing these companies to the forefront, don't they?
Yes. Now, Nunez JW on Facebook agrees with our hybrid technology idea. He says, the only hybrid technology I loved was 7 of 9.
Okay.
7 of 9 happens to be from Star Trek. It's a Star Trek reference.
There we go. Okay.
She was a Borg character. Good character.
Good character, yes.
We haven't even gotten into the hydrogen yet, and we'll probably skip that because we're out of time. But that's probably another one of those in that category.
Definitely. And then the Bion Danish Genome Institute. Isn't battery density directly proportional with lithium content? I'm not sure right offhand.
Yeah.
You are probably right there.
Yep. Niles, you're very technical, and you sometimes stretch the limits of our understanding, but that's why we like you on this show.
Yes. Love your comments. And then Michael Aldia says at 100% state of charge, the separator in the cell in a lithium ion can start to degrade. That is definitely true. That's part of why the lithium ion technology is not recommended to go to 100%. Lithium iron phosphate, the LFP batteries, have a different technology or a different chemical composition, basically. And that issue does not happen because of the chemical composition. That's why they can take the 100% state of charge.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, Michael says a little bit earlier, I missed it. He says, yeah, that should be a typo then. He's talking about the Tesla Model S owner's manual suggesting that you should be charging your batteries to 100%.
Yes.
That's just not correct, he says.
Yes. So I think we've gotten all of our questions for today. So with that, I think we're about ready to close up and be ready. Come watch us tomorrow on the Tesla Roadster podcast. Again, it'll be the same time, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time.
And we'll more than likely, instead of having the studio green screen behind us, we'll have a cool picture, AI generated, of a Roadster. And those of you that aren't playing with AI yet, I strongly suggest you get yourself a Mid-Journey subscription, and you can render images and just let your imagination run wild. I find that the problem I have is I'm not imaginative enough to, create the prompts. And then I see other people putting in poems, basically, and this thing will render an image based on what it read.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Fascinating new technology. As always, we appreciate you all joining us. We hope you're enjoying it as much as we are. Again, we are going to be live tomorrow at 10 o'clock again for the Roadster podcast. If you don't have a Roadster, you can still join us. We'll also tomorrow talk about those 3 0-mile Roadsters that we didn't touch on in this conversation. We actually are a high bid right now of $750,000 for those 3 cars. And I'm expecting more pictures today, so keep an eye on our website. We'll, as soon as I get them, we will post those as well. And then Thursday, we have our other general EV podcast at 10 o'clock as well, and would love to see you join us then. So in the meantime, I'm Pete Gruber signing off.
Mark Schaffner, thank you for joining us.